you're a Caitlin Clark fan, if you're an Indiana Fever fan, this is something you already know. However, for the haters out there, the old WNBA fandom, many of you call them the slows. For those fans, they're in complete denial. We've tried to tell people Caitlin Clark moves the needle.
If you're a Caitlin Clark fan, if you bleed Indiana Fever blue and gold, then buckle up because what I'm about to tell you is going to hit like a freight train. Sophie Cunningham just dropped the bombshell on her podcast that has sent absolute shockwaves through the entire WNBA, and the implications for Caitlin Clark and the Fever's future are nothing short of catastrophic. We're talking about a potential organizational meltdown that could derail everything this franchise has been building. And here's the kicker. The numbers don't lie, and when you see what the Fever are about to throw away, you're going to lose your mind. Now, for those of you who've been paying attention, you already know Caitlin Clark moves the needle.
So Sophie Cunningham is one of the biggest names in the WNBA. And as well as that, she's also one of the best glue guys, role players in the entire league. Say we want about Sophie Cunningham, she shot 63% true shooting percentage while being a well above average defender. I'm not going to say a great defender, but like well above average defender. She's one of the better defenders on the Fever, and she's somebody that originally usurped DeWanna Bonner as a starter.
Unlike anyone else in this league. But for the haters out there, for the old WNBA fandom that some call the slows, the ones still living in complete denial about Clark's massive impact, this story is about to slap you with a cold dose of reality. Because what's happening right now in Indiana isn't just about one player leaving. It's about watching a franchise potentially fumble the bag so hard that it could change the entire trajectory of their generational superstar's career. So here's what went down. Sophie Cunningham, one of the most underrated and valuable role players in the entire WNBA, just went on her podcast and casually mentioned that the next team she plays for, she wants a bigger contract so she can finally buy a house and get all cozy. Now, on the surface,
Caitlin Clark moves the needle unlike anybody else in this league or everybody else in this league. It just sort of is what it is. Fans are coming to see one particular player, and along with that carries over the support to the entire team. Well, Forbes has released a rather very interesting insight report that tells you exactly how much the Indiana Fever's social media engagements are actually monetarily worth.
That might sound like a reasonable career goal, right? But hold on, because when you dig deeper into what she's really saying, this wasn't just some casual career chat. This was a crystal clear signal that one of the Fever's most vital unsung heroes is essentially announcing her departure. And the timing? Absolutely devastating. Let me break down why this matters so much. Sophie Cunningham isn't just some bench player or a roster filler. This woman is one of the best glue guys in the entire league. We're talking about a player who shot an insane 63% true shooting percentage last season while being a well above.
It does sound like the Fever are not going to keep her. From her podcast, a lot of the time she'd been mentioning the Fever, and in the most recent podcast, she did not mention the Fever, and she said this.
And I think the next team I play for, I want a bigger contract, so then I can buy a house.
Defender, not just average, well above average. She's legitimately one of the better defenders on the Fever roster, and she's the kind of player who originally came in and usurped Dana Bonner as a starter. That's not a small feat, folks. But here's where it gets really interesting. This unexpected announcement immediately raises massive red flags for anyone who actually cares about the Indiana Fever's ability to contend for championships, and honestly, for Caitlin Clark's future success too. Because losing Sophie Cunningham, who's known for her high-volume three-point shooting and that invaluable glue guy mentality, leaves a hole in this roster that you simply cannot easily fill. We're not talking.
Forbes has released a rather very interesting insight report that tells you exactly how much the Indiana Fever's social media engagements are actually monetarily worth, either on X or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, whatever. I mean, all these posts have a monetary value to them based on engagement. Boy, their posts are worth a lot of money. They are worth a lot of money, and I can tell you right now, that's a little over 5 times higher than
Talking about replacing just any player. We're talking about someone who directly impacts the crucial offensive spacing and defensive stability that Caitlin Clark desperately needs to play her absolute best basketball. And let me tell you something that the media has been trying to hammer home for months now. Caitlin Clark moves the needle unlike anybody else in this league. Period. End of story. Fans aren't showing up to arenas and tuning into games to see just any team. They're coming to see one particular player, and the support for Clark naturally carries over to the entire team. That's just how star power works in professional sports. But here's where things get absolutely wild. Forbes just released a social media valuation report that is going to blow your mind.
This is the dumbest thing I think I've seen a team do. Like, genuinely. They traded 4 years of Sinai Rivers, and by the way, the Fever wouldn't have drafted Sinai Rivers. The Fever would not have drafted Sinai Rivers. The Fever are dumbasses. They would have drafted somebody else. But losing Sophie Cunningham for money reasons is not a smart thing to do. Like,
This report shows exactly how much the Indiana Fever's social media engagements are actually worth in cold, hard cash. And for Caitlin Clark, the stakes couldn't possibly be higher. She came into this league with unprecedented hype, single-handedly redefining what WNBA engagement looks like and bringing literal millions of new fans to the sport. The expectation for her isn't just to compete, it's to actually contend for multiple championships. So losing a proven, low-ego, high-impact player like Sophie Cunningham, especially if it's happening because of some perceived financial mismanagement by the front office, would be an absolutely devastating pill to swallow.
They are worth a lot of money, and I can tell you right now, that's a little over 5 times higher than the next WNBA team. 5 times higher. Let's go down here. Just scroll down. The Indiana Fever's staggering $55 million social media evaluation speaks volumes. Now, before we get into this, let me just come over here and let me read this to you so you know
Talk numbers, because the data is absolutely staggering. Sophie Cunningham's on-court value is undeniable and frankly irreplaceable. Her stats tell the story. 63% true shooting percentage combined with a solid defensive game that makes her one of the Fever's better perimeter defenders. But here's the kicker that really matters. She shoots 43% from three-point range at high volume. Do you understand what that means for a team built around a player like Caitlin Clark? It means she stretches defenses to their absolute breaking point, creating that critical space for drivers and cutters to operate. She plays within the system. She's got that winner's mentality, and get this, she's got an on-court ego that's about as close to zero as you'll find from any professional athlete.
An unpopular opinion, Sophie's better than Lexi. But it's close enough, fair enough, Lexi's younger. But I'm like, Lexi's not worth a max either. Like, if you're stuck in a situation where you've got 2 wings that are not max contract players looking for max contracts, and you have to pick one or the other, you're kind of screwed. Especially because you could have had a cost-controlled Sinai Rivers for 4 years. At the same time, what are the odds that Steph White would have not developed Sinai Rivers?
At this level. These aren't just numbers on a stat sheet. These are the hallmarks of a crucial role player who genuinely elevates everyone around her, making her potential departure even more impactful than most people realize. And here's where the Forbes report gets really juicy. This thing reveals the monetary value of social media engagements across platforms like X, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Every single post has a monetary value attached to it based on engagement metrics. And folks, the Fever's posts are worth an absolute fortune. Sophie Cunningham isn't just valuable on the court either. Off the court, she's consistently one of the most searched WNBA players online. She lands lucrative sponsorship deals, like her partnership with Arby's. Her popularity seriously boosts the team's overall brand and how fans engage with the franchise. Now, yes,
in digital, the valuations of these franchises are increasing dramatically. The ratings on television are better than ever, and I think there's no better time to look at what's happening on social media. Using a model called, quote, social value metric, the study calculated the estimated pay media equivalent value created by organic posts, factoring in impressions, video views, engagements to benchmark what the same exposure would cost through advertising. So in other words, if you...
Caitlin Clark is definitely the main reason the Fever's social media presence is valued at a mind-blowing $55 million. That's right, $55 million. And that number is over 5 times higher than the next WNBA team. 5 times! But here's what people need to understand. Players like Sophie Cunningham amplify that reach exponentially. So losing such a marketable and beloved figure isn't just a roster hit. It's a real blow to the Fever's broader appeal and their ability to cash in on all this newfound stardom. And here's where the criticism gets brutal. Not wanting to keep Sophie Cunningham is genuinely one of the dumbest things this team could possibly do. And I'm not alone in saying that. Critics across the basketball world are slamming this decision. Think about it. The Fever traded away for years of Cy Rivers, a cost-controlled draft pick, specifically to acquire Sophie Cunningham. And here's a dirty little secret. The Fever wouldn't have even drafted Cy Rivers in the first place. They probably would have drafted somebody else entirely. But losing Sophie Cunningham purely for financial reasons? That's not just bad business. That's organizational malpractice.
KK Timpson, I've watched her the entire year. And you could say, oh, you know, KK could have been, like, she should have been progressing much better if Steph White had played her more. I'm watching her over in Europe. She's not getting better. She's not getting better. Like, she's cooking the bad teams and then looks lost against the good teams. She's not really improving, and that is concerning. That is concerning. And now you're at a stage where, like, you have to realistically keep, like, if you don't keep...
The potential loss of Cunningham throws some serious shade on the Fever's past management decisions. Remember, this franchise famously sacrificed the 8th overall pick in the draft. A pick they used on promising talent Cy Rivers, specifically to get Sophie Cunningham into a Fever uniform. That entire move was designed to bring in a seasoned, effective player who could immediately boost the roster and help them compete. Now, to potentially let that asset just walk away after only one single season, essentially turning her into an expensive one-year rental for such a high draft pick? Critics are already calling it one of the dumbest moves a team could possibly make. The initial investment made perfect sense for a winning strategy, but the fact that it could all fall apart now points to a catastrophic miscalculation by the front office. Let me put this in perspective for you. The Indiana Fever's $55 million social media evaluation speaks volumes about their current position in the league. Critics are absolutely not holding back right now. They're slamming the Fever's management for what looks like a monumental gaffe. Trading away 4 years of a cost-controlled draft pick for a player who just one season later appears to be on the verge of leaving because of contract disputes? That's not just questionable, it's baffling. This isn't simply about keeping one player on the roster. It's about smart asset management and actually building a championship contender that can sustain success over multiple years. The message from analysts is crystal clear. Unless Sophie Cunningham is demanding a maximum contract, which is highly unlikely given her role as a complementary piece, then the Fever have made an absolutely unforgivable error. This decision jeopardizes their entire long-term strategy and completely undermines the immediate competitive window they have right now with Caitlin Clark in her prime. But wait, there's more complexity to this situation. There's an unpopular opinion floating around basketball circles that Sophie is actually better than Lexi Hall right now, though it's admittedly close. Lexi is younger, which gives her more theoretical upside, but here's the problem. Lexi isn't worth a max contract either. So the Fever find themselves stuck in this absolutely brutal situation where they've got two wing players who aren't max contract caliber, but both are looking for substantial money. They're essentially forced to pick one or the other, and either way, they're kind of screwed, especially when you consider they could have had a cost-controlled Cy Rivers locked up for 4 years instead. At its core, the issue here is purely financial. Sophie Cunningham has made it super clear that she wants a bigger contract. And honestly, that's a completely reasonable request given how well she performs and how much value she brings to the organization. But the Fever are facing serious salary cap constraints and some impossibly tough choices, especially as they're trying to build this entire team around Caitlin Clark's generational talent. This creates a challenging dilemma. How do you keep those essential role players happy without completely messing up your future financial flexibility? If the Fever can't or won't meet Cunningham's market value, it signals a potentially alarming prioritization problem within the organization. This isn't just about a player leaving in free agency. It's sending a clear message about how the team actually values its key components and whether they truly understand what it takes to build a championship roster. Forbes used something called the social value metric model to calculate these numbers. It's basically the estimated paid media equivalent value created by organic social media posts, factoring in things like impressions, video views, and engagements. Essentially, they're benchmarking what the same exposure would cost if you had to pay for it through traditional advertising. And when you look at it that way, the numbers become even more staggering. The data revealed that the Indiana Fever led the entire league with an estimated $55.04 million in social value, generating 38.73 million engagements and 1.17 billion impressions during the 2025 season. The top 5 teams by social value were the Indiana Fever at number 1, and then way down at number 2, the Dallas Wings at just 8.61 million. You went from 55 million straight down to 8.61. That gap is absolutely insane. But here's what makes this situation even more dire. The Fever's wing depth is already a serious concern because of KK Timpson's stagnant development. There were high hopes for her progression this season, but observers who've been watching her play in Europe are noticing that she's simply not moving forward at all. She's struggling against good teams and isn't showing the improvement everyone expected. This lack of growth means the Fever absolutely cannot rely on her to seamlessly step into a bigger role if Sophie Cunningham walks. Without Timpson evolving as expected and potentially losing Cunningham at the same time, the Fever's wing rotation is going to become critically thin. That leaves Caitlin Clark with even fewer reliable perimeter threats and defensive options, making an already tough situation exponentially more dire. Sophie Cunningham's unique mix of shooting, defense, and incredible selflessness makes her a truly irreplaceable player for this Fever team. Her zero-ego approach means she'll embrace literally any role you give her, making her the ultimate team-first player. That's an incredibly rare find in professional sports at any level. Unless the Fever somehow have someone like Aya McBride just waiting in the wings, ready to contribute immediately, Sophie's specific contributions simply cannot be replicated. This isn't about finding another scorer to put points on the board. It's about finding a player who genuinely makes everyone else around her better without needing any of the spotlight or recognition. And here's what really matters to me personally. I don't give a damn about the whole enforcer persona or tough player narrative. What I do care about is the fact that she shoots 43% from 3 at high volume. She's tough. She plays within her role. She plays within the system. And most importantly, she's a proven winner with near zero ego. Those qualities are absolutely priceless in today's game. The tone of Cunningham's podcast comments goes way beyond just speculation or guessing. It strongly suggests she's already had direct conversations with the organization about her future. It sounds exactly like a player who's either been directly told the team isn't keeping her, or that they're simply unwilling to meet her contract demands for the upcoming season. This isn't some clever negotiating tactic to drive up her price. This is the genuine lament of someone who's already mentally preparing to start a brand new professional chapter elsewhere. Making such a premature public declaration signals a significant breakdown in contract negotiations or a clear organizational decision to move in a completely different direction. And that sends an incredibly troubling message about how the Fever actually manage their most vital assets. The year-over-year growth numbers make this potential loss even more painful. The Fever increased their social media engagements by 505%, increased impressions by 251%, and increased their overall social value by 344%. They experienced that level of explosive growth and still ended up $37 million ahead of the second-place team. The gap is just absolutely mind-blowing. The consequences of this potential misstep ripple through the Fever's entire draft strategy and future planning. They invested heavily in acquiring Cunningham, giving up a genuinely valuable draft pick because they assumed she would be a long-term foundational piece of this team. Now, if she just walks away for nothing in return, they've basically lost that pick without any sustained benefit whatsoever. Yeah, WNBA teams sometimes don't value draft picks quite as much as NBA franchises do. But the sheer scale of this particular loss, sacrificing the 8th overall pick for what could amount to just one season of production from a key player, represents an egregious waste of organizational resources. And here's a troubling rumor that's circulating right now. The Fever might actually be prioritizing a maximum contract for Natasha Howard over keeping Sophie Cunningham. This potential strategic choice is being met with widespread disbelief among serious basketball analysts. Natasha Howard, while certainly a solid player, typically slows down offensive pace and flow. Sophie Cunningham, on the other hand, actively helps with ball movement and floor spacing. Prioritizing a player who disrupts your offensive rhythm over one who seamlessly fits into a modern, fast-paced system specifically designed around Caitlin Clark's unique skill set, that goes against literally everything we've learned about winning basketball over the last 2 decades. It signifies a profound misunderstanding of how to actually build a championship-caliber team in today's game. This potential choice to prioritize Natasha Howard over Sophie Cunningham is being called basketball blasphemy by people who understand the modern game. Basketball today, especially when you're building around a transcendent talent like Caitlin Clark, demands elite shooting, proper floor spacing, and versatile low-ego role players who understand their assignments. Sophie Cunningham totally embodies that entire philosophy. Howard's playing style, while valuable in certain contexts, is seen as far less complementary to what the Fever are trying to accomplish. Sacrificing one of the league's most valuable plug-and-play pieces, especially if you can sign her at a reasonable rate well below a max contract for a player who fundamentally alters your offensive identity in a less optimal way, that's a decision that could legitimately haunt this franchise for years, severely hindering Caitlin Clark's ability to truly unleash her full potential. There's a growing fear among analysts that the Fever's recent successes have been more about sheer dumb luck than brilliant strategic planning. Think about it. Drafting both Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, then having the incredible fortune that Boston adjusted her entire game perfectly to complement Clark's style. Add in Kelsey Mitchell's development as an elite off-ball cutter. Those were all pretty fortunate circumstances that fell into place almost by accident. Even the hardship players they signed during injury crises didn't truly fit their run-and-gun offensive philosophy. Now, with Sophie Cunningham's potential exit looming large, concerns are seriously mounting that this luck is finally running out. The summer outlook for the Indiana Fever is now absolutely riddled with anxiety and uncertainty. Analysts genuinely fear the team will recruit poorly and make catastrophically bad decisions with their remaining draft picks and free agency opportunities. The core concern is that they're not actively building a proper, cohesive roster that truly maximizes Caitlin Clark's once-in-a-generation talent. Instead, they might squander golden opportunities and alienate key veteran players, leaving Clark in a frustrating situation where her extraordinary individual efforts simply aren't translating into legitimate team success because of preventable organizational missteps. Sophie Cunningham's shocking exit hint isn't just about one player potentially leaving in free agency. It's a loud warning signal that's reverberating through the entire Indiana Fever organization right now. If they allow one of the league's most efficient, low-ego, and genuinely impactful role players to simply walk away over a contract dispute that should be easily resolvable, it represents a catastrophic failure in organizational management. It directly undermines the competitive championship window that Caitlin Clark has opened up with her arrival. This move, or perhaps more accurately the lack of action to prevent it, could lead to immense frustration for Clark, who absolutely deserves a properly constructed roster to legitimately chase championships. The true value of a player like Sophie Cunningham is genuinely immeasurable in today's game, and losing her for completely preventable financial reasons is an error that could forever alter the Fever's destiny and Caitlin Clark's legacy in Indiana.